1 week in July. 23 of the world's most beautiful cars. And some of France's most spectacular chateaux. This is the story of a very special birthday party. The Champagne region is the starting point for a 5-day-long celebration. A spectacular road trip through the French countryside that will end at the motorsport mecca of Le Mans. The occasion is the 50th anniversary of Ferrari's 250 GTO, often cited as the most beautiful and iconic sports car of all time. Starting in 1962, only 36 GTOs were ever built. 23 of them are gathered here, brought together by owners from different parts of the world.
Most of them come from Canada and the US, and the others are coming from Europe, mainly the UK, and then France, Switzerland, and it's rather spread over.
This year marks the car's 50th birthday, but the first GTO tour was held back in 1982, and it's now a regular event.
Well, the tour is absolutely fantastic. Firstly, it doesn't happen very frequently. It happens once every 5 years. The number of owners who have been here for the 2 and 3 tours that I have been on remain very, very constant. And the GTO is a glue that brings us all together. And every one of these guys is interesting in their own right. So it's a very, very special group of people, and it's a very special tour.
In recent years, demand for these rare and beautiful cars has reached fever pitch. Each of them is now valued at more than $30 million.
Any car collector will tell you that the GTO is one of the most valuable cars in the world. The inevitable question is, why? I think it's a combination. It looks great, it sounds great, it's got racing provenance, it won almost everything, but it's also a car that any collector can enjoy. And the man spending that much money wants to know what it's like to drive.
The Ferrari GTO is undoubtedly one of the best cars in the world. It can't carry the luggage that Rolls-Royce will, or 6 people, or whatever. But it looks wonderful, it has a history, it's fabulous to drive, there's an engineering excellence to it. It's about doing a number of things well.
The tour will cover 1,200 kilometers over 5 days. But the first section is a short drive through the Champagne region to what remains of the old Reims Grand Prix circuit. For the GTOs, the circuit is special because it was the scene of some of their epic racing battles in the early 1960s. Back then, the cars were driven by legendary racers such as Graham Hill, Jackie Stewart, and Phil Hill. The house has not been used for serious competition since 1966, but the cars seem at home in the old pit lane.
Which they've just slightly restored.
For both cars and owners, it's a reunion. a chance to reacquaint themselves.
Yeah, because of the cameras.
Day one of the tour ends at the Abbey of Auvilliers. It's the original 17th century home of Dom Pérignon, the famous Benedictine monk. He perfected his techniques for making champagne here, and today it remains the symbolic home of his world-famous wine. For the assembled guests, it's a spectacular setting in which to enjoy both Ferrari and Dom Pérignon.
I think it's a very simple link. Both are iconic brands. Ferrari created a company in 1947, which became in, let's say, half a century, one of the most famous brands of all. And Dom Pérignon is also the so-called father of champagne. Ferrari is the father of modern sports car, and it was absolutely normal that we decided to co-organize such a trip to celebrate such a great anniversary.
There are familiar faces among the guests, including film star Michelle Yeoh and her partner Jean Todt, the architect of Ferrari's phenomenal F1 success story in recent times. Moet Hennessy's Stéphane Bachiera and Christophe Navarre are hosting the event. And Ferrari chairman Luca di Montezemolo is also here, a clear sign of his personal support for his company's heritage department, Ferrari Classiche.
In the last 5 to 10 years, they've really began to recognize they've always had the passion and the history, and now they're helping owners such as myself to enjoy their cars more through that.
Each of these GTOs has a personal story to tell. Car 22 was delivered to its first owner in 1962 and now belongs to Nick Mason of Pink Floyd.
Yeah, I like the leaves. This is good.
Nick's passion for the Ferrari GTO started when he was a boy.
Well, it would have been about 1964, 65. I'd gone to Goodwood with my father, who was photographing, and I've actually got the picture I took for the chicane at Goodwood, but I think even more so, I remember seeing the car in the paddock. There was probably more than one, and thinking, how on earth does anyone get to that position in life where they can have one of these cars and drive them and use them on the road?
In 1978, Nick arrived at that position in life and joined the exclusive GTO Owners Club. In an amazing coincidence, he discovered that his car was the very same one that he'd photographed at Goodwood 15 years before. The tour is leaving for the historic chateau of Vaux-le-Vicomte. It's several hundred kilometers away on fast country roads, echoing the original 60s road race, the Tour de France Automobile.
We are very impressed by the fact that some of those owners are taking on the road their beautiful cars We all know that they are expensive, but you know, a car is a car, a painting is a painting, a furniture is a furniture. A furniture is made to be in a house, a painting on a wall, and a car is made to be on the roads. It's just remarkable that they use them as they were intended to be used. So we admire them a lot.
Daniela Ellerbrock's car was raced all over Europe in the 1960s, even as far as Angola for the Grand Prix in Luanda in '64. But for Daniela, who is the only female driver on the tour, the car has a more personal connection.
Actually, I inherited it from my dad. Not only me, also my brother and my sister. And yeah, and we keep it and we drive it and we love that car. And my dad loved the car. I think it is a wonderful object by itself, just to look at it. But they're made for being driven. So I think you really have to drive those cars. I'm sorry for those cars just to sit in the garage and just look at them. They have to be driven.
They're cars, they were raced, they're
Yep.
meant to be driven. I guess you can't think about the value when you're driving it. For me, it's a car and it's meant to be driven.
After 120 kilometers, the tour reaches Vaux-le-Vicomte. The chateau was built in 1661 by an army of 18,000 workers for Nicolas Fouquet, one of Louis XIV's ministers. But the king decided that it was too luxurious. In a classic fall from grace, Nicolas Fouquet was arrested for corruption, his wife was exiled, and the chateau was confiscated. Back in the 21st century, the next leg of the tour offers cars and drivers more than 200 kilometers of country roads. For a highly strung early 1960s sports racer on skinny tires, the GTO is surprisingly stable.
Like all those 250s, it's incredibly forgiving, and that's one of the great things about it. It's absolutely an amateur's race car. I mean, great if you're professional, you'll do really well with it, but an amateur can drive it.
It's actually very easy to drive. It's very forgiving. If you do a little mistake, it's very forgiving because it does everything quite slowly because it's quite long. And I think he's very easy to drive.
You've got to remember this is a racing car. It wasn't built to be comfortable, wasn't built to travel from A to B. It's hot, it's very noisy, and it's very cramped. But I'll tell you what, it's worth it.
These are not modern cars. They take a certain amount of skill to drive. They take passion. 7 or 8 hours in one of these cars in July in France takes an ability to handle heat, handle vibration, handle noise, and come out with a smile.
Ferrari 250 GTO is regularly cited as the most beautiful sports car of all time. A sublime meeting of form and function.
For a lot of people, it's that perfect balance of it. The lines of it just seem to be the most exquisite. And you know, the short wheelbase looks great, the Lusso looks great, the 275 look great. The GTO just seems to have the perfect lines.
The cars may be priceless, but it's their looks that draw attention.
What's so nice about what is now known to be one of the most valuable cars in the world is that people don't immediately go sulky and go spoiled bastard. They tend to really enjoy the fact that the cars are taken out and driven around and so on. And this thing of where you have something that is part an art object, but actually it's also a tool. And that mix is great. And people love to come and see the cars sort of being driven around and so on. And sometimes I'm quite surprised how generous people are in a way about the fact that, you know, a privileged few of us get to drive these things. But the reality is that we do actually give pleasure to other people.
As the tour draws to a close, the grand finale is the triumphant return of the GTOs to Le Mans. In the early 1960s, GTOs from the factory's own Scuderia Ferrari team and many private owners competed here in the famous 24 Hours of Le Mans. Today's Le Mans Classic Weekend celebrates those memories.
I think Le Mans Classic is one of the major worldwide vintage car events, and all those people who are coming to attend are fans, aficionados. They love cars, and for them the GTO is among, the peak of quality and pedigree. It has got everything. So having 15, 20 GTOs going around Le Mans, not only for the GTO owners, but also for the public, that was so incredible, so unexpected.
There were lots of people looking at the cars, and I like that. I mean, it's wonderful that people are as interested, and they come to those events and they want to see the cars. It was a fantastic experience, actually.
The fans' enthusiasm is extraordinary, an echo of an earlier time and place when the GTO first arrived at Le Mans in 1962. Several cars on the tour competed here 50 years ago. Nick Mason's car came second in class and third overall. Daniela Erlebrock's fourth overall and second in class. For many owners, it was Le Mans that first fired their GTO passion.
Well, I was a teenager when the car was raced in its day, and I remember looking at black and white photos of these cars at Le Mans, including this car that I have now, the number 24 car, which finished second, and thinking how fantastic they looked. But at that time, I didn't have a driver's license, and so it didn't translate into something that I actually would be touching and driving one day.
Jean-Pierre Horry was a race mechanic on Chip Connor's car for the 1963 Le Mans 24 Hours. Jean-Pierre recalls that his Belgian race team had no car transporters. They drove their GTOs to the circuit, all the way from Brussels.
Et on les faisait, à l'époque, il n'y avait pas beaucoup d'autoroutes, parce que ça n'existait quasiment pas les autoroutes, on faisait tout des nationales, mais il y avait beaucoup moins de trafic qu'aujourd'hui, et nous faisions plus ou moins les déplacements à 100 de moyenne. On mettait 5-6 heures pour arriver depuis Bruxelles jusqu'au Mans. C'était notre jeunesse et les gloires, parce que partout où elles allaient, partout on gagnait, on faisait des places d'honneur et c'était vraiment des voitures miraculeuses.
As the tour comes to its end, most would agree that the Ferrari GTO has enjoyed a fitting celebration to mark its 50th birthday.
Yeah, for me it's the first time actually I did this, and it was a lot of fun. And I loved seeing all those cars together, because if I'm honest, I didn't know that they are so different. Just when you look at them from the back, they're so different in shape, and I thought it was wonderful seeing them all together. And meeting the owners. I mean, everybody that's here is driving those cars, and that's wonderful.
It's just been a great experience. Look, GTOs are about passion. Ferrari's about passion. And this whole tour is about passion. So the combination of the car, the tour, it's all very, very special.